Welcome to the Eclectic Gamers Podcast. Today is Sunday, January 23rd. This is episode 159. I'm Tony.
I'm Dennis. Tony, you've got a different intro of stuff this time, right? Things haven't been like the same old.
Been pretty much identical. The only things that have changed is who is out with COVID. That's it. So, I mean, just lots of work. Falling asleep on the couch occasionally, playing SnowRunner occasionally, watching like Book of Boba Fett and finishing The Expanse and all that.
What do you think about Book of Boba Fett?
It's not as good as Mando.
I think it's way not as good as Mando.
It's had, of all the episodes that are out so far, it's like the first episode, I was like, I don't really care.
I know your reaction to the first. Your reaction to the first episode is actually worse than mine was, because I actually thought the first episode was okay.
See, and then I enjoyed the second episode quite a lot.
It was better.
And then the next two episodes since have been
I read an opinion piece yesterday. I forget what site it was on, and I think that because I wasn't quite sure because like it's interesting graphically. They're throwing on the member berries in decent spots and stuff, and they finally articulated what, and I wasn't putting my finger on it. He's so nice. I think for me is really what it's coming down to. It's not the flashbacks. It's not, they did spend too much time on too much. Like, I don't think we needed to know the nuance of like every piece of equipment he got from the Sand People.
Well, I think that could have been useful if they didn't just murder them all immediately afterwards.
Maybe, but I killed them. The women and the children too. It's like, that's the no, for me, it's this, he wants to be a crime lord and he like kills no one. And he's going around and like, hey, let's help the other families for free. Hey, let's not do anything with the Hutts who tried to assassinate me. Hey, let's not kill any. I mean, I get the parts where he's merciful to build up his group, like with the modified cyborg people and stuff, but not this. Like, the way the author described it was, there's a scene in the last episode that was on. I think it's episode 4 for people that haven't seen it. There's a scene where there's these other families of the town or the planet or whatever, and it's totally like trying to give off a Godfather vibe. And the way the author wrote it is, but he comes across like he's Secretary General of the UN. And I'm like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I thought he was supposed to be this like awesome bounty hunter, and instead he just feels like I'm going to do a charisma check on everything.
Yeah, he's playing
Fallout with the silver tongue perk.
It's very much has a Boba Fett's neighborhood feel.
Yeah, it's just I like the action scenes. I like there's all sorts of pieces to it that are really good, but they're making him. I mean, the way and this is what I would agree with this is that he's been Disneyfied. He's not cool, and the problem is he's the most famous bounty hunter of Star Wars, and Mando is a more interesting character. And you notice they didn't do all this with Mando. We've only got like teeny little bits about him as a kid. And I don't think they need to ever tell us anything more about. We don't need to know.
Yeah. You don't need to know the whole backstory.
How to get every piece of armor.
Yeah. You don't need the whole backstory to everything.
No.
I've also not been a fan of this kind of flashback, flash forward, jump around thing.
I've historically that's not my favorite form of storytelling. Because in a way it's like, why didn't we just do the origin of Boba Fett post Sarlacc, if that's what you want, because that's what most of the screen time is. It's not the current stuff,
right?
But I get it as a narrative. I mean, it's not my least favorite narrative device. It's just anyway.
Yeah.
So, have you been watching that in a new chair?
I have. I upgraded my computer chair. My old computer chair, I bought a lot of 10. Conference room chairs that were being sold on public auction from a government for $10. So there was $1 a chair, and they've been decently comfortable, and I've just been throwing them out as they break down.
What do you do with dollar chairs? You don't repair a dollar chair. Yeah. Retire it.
I just toss them out. I still have like 4 of them left, I think, but I had some bonus money and stuff left over from Christmas, and some Christmas money. So I combined everything together, and I picked myself up a nice computer chair, because I've not had an actual nice high back computer chair in forever. So I picked up a Secret Labs Titan XL22 or 2022 edition. That chair is enormous, which of course it is. It's XL. It's made for a fat guy like me. It is the absolute best packed thing I've ever purchased anywhere and had and ordered in. I have bought TVs that wish they were packed as well and protected as well as this was when it came in. Assembled real easy, super comfortable. My kids aren't huge fans because they say the seat is too hard, and it's like it's designed for a fat guy. You weigh like 80 pounds, maybe. You're not going to sink into the foam padding because it's not designed for you.
Think of the children.
I don't. This is my chair.
I guess they can get. I guess they could get one of the dollar chairs out of the garage. Guess they'd be like, okay, Dad, dollar chair it is.
Yeah, they can have their vintage chairs that Mom picks up at the antique stores and reupholsters for them and stuff. That's what they can have.
Yeah, reupholster.
I've got my fancy chair now.
Fancy chair.
Fancy chair.
Well, I haven't been doing a whole lot. I did finish Biomutant, which I think you got me for my birthday.
Possibly.
Were you the one who got me?
No.
Who knows? The one.
No.
Yeah,
Did I?
don't blame you. Yeah,
Maybe.
furry mutant.
Possibly.
It was
birthdays were your birthday
a
was
long
like
time ago.
That's like I'm having problems remembering like things from like 4 days ago.
Well, anyway, it doesn't matter who got it. The point is, it's been defeated. I've completed the Biomutant, so I've started my Yakuza game, Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Okay,
I thought
you're done with furries.
Yes,
and now you're on to Yakuza,
which it's a turn-based RPG game.
Which is very different than the Yakuza.
I guess I never played one before. Everyone's always like, "Oh, Yakuza's so good. Yakuza's so good." And now here I am, and I'm like, the guy's all like, "I like to live my life kind of like I'm in Dragon Quest." I'm like, okay, because he's doing turn-based combat just like Dragon Quest.
Huh?
And there's a part where a guy goes, "Well, it's like those games you play. We all have our different skills, and when we get together, we're a party." And there's a party menu because it's an RPG. They're kind of like leaning on that pretty heavy.
You probably should have started with like Yakuza 0 or something like that. Like an actual Yakuza game.
It is funny, but oh my gosh, the cutscenes are so long. Like, this game must come from Japan because I'm having the controller turn off during these cutscenes.
It's a JRPG.
You've played those style games. Like,
I have totally played those games.
To me, it's a red flag if the game ends up having the controller turn off because the cutscene went so long.
I have definitely played games where I have died because the cutscene ends and you need to immediately do something. But I've been in a cutscene for 25 minutes.
You see, the trick they have to do is the old Capcom method that they started like with Resident Evil 4, where it's like, oh, it's a cutscene, but we're going to throw some crappy QuickTime events at you to make sure you stay at that control.
Hit X.
Because I used to set them down and be like, what is Wesker doing? Oh, my neck. No, Shabba.
Now I have to watch the whole cutscene again. No.
I have to hear his smack talk. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. So let's go ahead and go into the pinball section.
Okay.
There's not a lot here, which is probably just as well. But I think the obvious thing we need to start with is, of course, the really sad news that Lyman Sheats Jr., famed rules designer, programmer, passed away. We found out just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And so I do have a link in the show notes if people want to read about Lyman. There was a Pinball News article that covers his death and talks a bit about. It's not a very long piece, but it sort of covers what he was involved with in the hobby. Have you ever met him?
Not that I recall.
I've probably been at an event with Lyman, but I've never spoken. I never spoke with him before. So
it's one of those where I might have seen him in passing, like a lot of the other big names where I've seen them in passing, or I've seen them like at an event where they were sitting down doing signatures or doing something, but I didn't get in line with it or anything like that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, There's sort of there are two paths with Lyman, I would say, that one was he was a very, very skilled competitive player. So a lot of people knew him from that scene because, I mean, he was, an award-winning player. And then, of course, the other side of it, and the one I'm more familiar with, is just the sheer amount of high-quality rules that he produced. So, I mean, I only own one game that he worked on, Walking Dead, which was actually the last of the Stern cornerstones. But he was such a famed programmer, and I should say just famed in terms of rules design, that it was like there was a common refrain that people would say, "In Lyman we trust," because if he was on the rules, you knew that they might not start where you want him to be, but once he's done with it, it will be an excellent piece of software. And we saw that with Walking Dead, which started with rules that weren't very well liked and ended as, in some people's minds, as Stern's best game.
Right.
Similar thing happened with Spider-Man. I remember Steve Bowden, I don't remember if it was on our podcast when he was on, but I've heard him say before that, in his view, Lyman saved Spider-Man. Like, it was not a great game. And then he came in and saved it. Batman 66. Remember they had to rush that out. I think they rushed it out because Adam West was really sick with cancer.
Right.
But that ended up with we know our area competitive players love the rules of Batman 66 because it's so well designed. Your favorite game of all time, Attack from Mars, he did the software for that. So, worked on that with Brian Eddy. He worked on Medieval Madness as well. I mean, he's been involved with some of the most popular pinball machines to ever exist.
Right.
And even though we had learned last year that he had left Stern, we did subsequently find out that he was working on an enhanced software package with Josh Sharp over with Chicago Gaming Company on their Cactus Canyon remake. Yeah. I was trying to think of it, calling it remake or revisited. I don't really remember anymore.
I don't remember what they call it.
So anyway, very, very tragic. Our condolences, of course, go out to all of his friends and family. So let's move to a happier pinball topic, Tony. And that would be Haggis. Do you know how to let the air out of a mon?
I do.
I mentioned that on when I was doing the pinball show last week to Zach. I think I mentioned that, and that I thought that they should do a Rob Roy pin, and I don't think he knew what I was talking about.
I can guarantee you he did not know what you were talking about.
In his defense, most of our listeners probably don't know either.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I do have to say I did have one person write into me and say they knew the movie line where I said life is pain, you just get used to it. I did have one person know that it was from The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Nice.
It was my sister, who apparently listens to the show.
Well, that doesn't count.
It doesn't. No, because I know she knows that movie. Oh, she's the only one of any of y'all who have any class. Bunch of trash tier people watching Book of Boba Fett. So anyway, so Haggis. Okay, so they haven't announced they're doing Rob Roy, but this is the next best thing. They did announce that Fathom Revisited is now in production.
Well, that's good for the 47 people who care.
Yes. Or the 150 people who care. Or I don't actually know how many total.
Didn't they increase it even more?
Well, it's tricky because they did not increase their the enhanced edition, which is like the LE, more than what they initially announced. However, they were also selling classic editions, and I don't think there's actually.
That's what it was.
I'm not even sure if there was you had to commit to the classic editions by a set date. You might have. I think so. I thought so because I think they want to move. I don't think they want to be pulling like an American Pinball where everything is on the line forever sort of thing. They originally had planned to start doing production in the summer. They'd announced a pushback to January, and it appears they did keep that commitment. And on the Pinball Show episode, which people can, I don't remember what episode number it was, but it is the last one if you want to check it out. I did mention that I thought it would behoove Damien, the owner of Haggis, to at least build or start building some of them in January and just keep that commitment to reassure folks.
Right.
And I don't know how many they're planning to build, but regardless, they are building them. And I think that was a smart move rather than trying to do another push. So very good news for people looking forward to that. I did read the announcement, and it didn't sound like it was necessarily going to be just like a few. That they might actually be ready to get going and just keep it going, which I'm not sure they had any more Celts to build anyway. So anyway, very positive.
Right. I don't know how well the Celt sold overall, so
they didn't have very many to be done. I've heard very good things about it in terms of build quality from people who got them. And you go, again, American Pinball, pretty well renowned for their build quality as well. But making deadlines is just something I think is very important for anyone, but especially anyone who's new. And
right.
And as we sort of talked about, I think in our year in review, you got to remember that companies like Highway successfully built Full Throttle, and then it was the sophomore game where they stumbled. And so that's where I think there's a lot more respect I feel for what Damien's doing out of Haggis than there were a lot of concerns coming out of Highway Pinball for a really long time before the Aliens were even released. But nonetheless, when you're new, it's right. When you're new, you're sus. It's just how it is.
Everything, especially with just how poorly pinheads have been treated by new people.
Well, in other pinball news, Tony, there is a new third-party development kit for the P3 out of Multimorphic called Flipper Foxtrot Rhythm Explosion. This is a Nick Baldridge game. It uses the Cannon Lagoon playfield module, and then it's a software purchase of $149. And this time, Nick often does fairly unique things when it comes to what he's been working on in P3. And so in this case, he went with a rhythm action game. So it's combination rhythm video game and combination pinball game. And so I have not seen the footage of this. I think it was Gamma Goat on Twitch streamed it. I did not see the footage of it though.
I've not seen any footage.
And so basically my understanding is there are roughly 30 songs in the game. You're actually hitting buttons to make your notes like you would in a lot of, for those, I don't know if the listeners have played rhythm games, but a lot of them are like click the notes on the controller. That's the vibe I'm getting from the walkthrough that I see. Now, if you miss a note, then a ball comes into play and you're supposed to make a shot with that ball. Otherwise, I believe if the ball drains, you lose health. Missing notes, you lose health. And there's a scoring, but basically the song ends if you run out of all of your health. So again, like getting booed off the stage is how my analogy is. And there is a notation that on higher difficulties, there are different note modifiers that come into play and all of that. So anyway, I can't really say a lot other than it's out and that's the price and that's the module you need, but it's something new that P3 owners
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing is that Nick by himself has been pretty much pulling a ton of extra P3 stuff out.
Yeah, he's got, he's had, we had him, the Silver Falls game he worked on with his daughter. That came out last year. And then he had Ranger in the Ruins. And he has to have another game, but it's licensed. So he hasn't been able to release it publicly. He's got one based on Quest for Glory, which sadly is the one that I'm most interested in because I actually played that video game from Sierra. Hey, we're going to talk about Microsoft later on in the episode. They control Sierra now because that's an Activision property.
I get, yeah.
Spoiler
alert. Well, they will control it.
So moving on to another item, we had an email from Jonathan Morell who wrote into us about our Hall of Fame of discussion that we had on our last episode. We were talking about the Pinball Industry Awards Hall of Fame, which was open to the public voting, and what we would pick. You did it live. Bill O'Reilly style on the air. And that, by the way, that's closed now, so you can't go and vote anymore. But what happened is Jonathan heard that and he wrote in, and I'm not going to read his whole email, but what, in a nutshell, the issue was he expressed concern about that 2000 to 2009 category, where we talked about like Terminator 3 or World Poker Tour.
Right.
My assumption will be, I think everyone's assumption will be because Lord of the Rings won last year, that Simpsons Pinball Party is kind of the next biggest one that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And what Jonathan noted was that he was really concerned that after like this one and next, so basically after like 3 years worth of Hall of Fame, is there really any worthy games left? Should the Pinball Industry Awards continue to allow the Hall of Fame to go on for 2000 and 2009? Because in his mind, he was guessing that Simpsons Pinball Party wins this go around. Then next year would probably be Spider-Man. And then after that, he starts to think it might get to be a bit of a problem. What do you think?
I think he's got a valid point. I think it might go a hair longer, but even that would be tough to see based upon what's actually in there. Because let's see, what else? What all do we have in this 2000 to 2009?
Beyond what he named, Spider-Man and Simpsons, World Poker Tour would probably be the only other, and it wasn't a successful game.
No,
when it came out, it's become popular in part, I think, because Kiefer did a really deep rule set with it. But I mean, you've got stuff like CSI 24, Sharky Shootout, Striker Extreme, the Pirates. There's some games in there that I like, but. And in Jonathan's case, he named some stuff like when you start looking at like 2010 to 2019, look at how much better the games got.
Yeah.
Even just with Stern, look at how much better they were. And so what I can say is, yes, I agree with Jonathan. I agree with you. Yes. In fact, the committee that is managing the Pinball Industry Awards, we have had a couple very short conversations. This has come up about assuming the Pinball Industry Awards continues to do a Hall of Fame, it does not make sense to say, let's say we ran the awards for a decade. Eventually you're almost running into the situation where you'd give everything everything would be in the Hall of Fame. It's like, that's true for any decade, but it's a big problem for the dark days of pinball, which is that decade. That is the worst decade we have.
Because it does not deserve to have.
Well, because that entire span, 2000, 2009, is only one manufacturer that meets our criteria.
Right.
And he's right. I mean, it was up until 2008, Stern was really it's just not a good decade. So I do not know what the ultimate solution will be. It seems like, and of course the committee that works on this can change every single year, but the current thinking, all I can say is, and again, we haven't had a lot of conversation because this is not this year's problem. And that's what the committee focuses on, is this year's problem, and mostly some very basic stuff about what's going to happen next year. But broadly speaking, yes, no one disagrees that we're going to have to cut off the 2000 to 2009 at some stage before addressing that with any other decade. We're just not sure yet when.
I would say probably 24 at the outside.
Yeah,
that gives you 2 more years.
Yeah, I would think probably we wouldn't go further, but I'm one voice, so.
Right?
But yeah, people don't want to get to the point where
mad. You got to get in there. You got to be that voice. You got to drive it. You got to succeed. You got to show people.
Even
if
I stay on the committee,
funnel your power, bend them to your will.
Some people have that strength of will with it, but of course, after all the work that I've done this year on it, I'm just like, can someone else just be on the committee next year instead of me, so I don't have to mess with it?
I mentally envision you like that slap video where the guy's slapping the kids and then starts slapping all the people. The thing, 24's the end.
Yes, I'm sure that will be what happens. But anyway, so thanks, Jonathan, for writing in, and those are our thoughts about that. Finally, got to end pinball with Rumor Corner.
Rumor Corner.
So many rumors out there, it's so hard to choose which one, because, I do drip feed these. I don't just dump all the rumors. That'd be rumor info dump. We're not doing that.
Rumor info dump.
We're not doing a 2-hour episode of me telling you every rumor.
Heck no, we're doing a 2-hour episode talking about Microsoft.
That's right. Spoilers. Surprise. So this Rumor Corner, I've kind of back with Haggis. People are probably like, why was Dennis bringing up American Pinball so much? Besides it being I thought a decent analogy for what I was trying to get across, I actually have had AP on the mind because of Rumor Corner. So everyone knows that Dennis Nordman, after Deep Root, went over to American Pinball. It was really hyped up by them last year. We know that he's going to be working on several games, including licensed games. Yet again, name dropping the last pinball show I was on. We actually talked a little bit, very briefly, because at that time, I was thinking that Nordman's and AP's next game would be one of his, and that I thought it would be Sherlock Holmes. They renewed that, and that's not an interesting rumor, because they renewed the trademark or license or whatever, patent or whatever they had, because that's for like their font choice or whatever, because that's one of those you can be original because you don't have to. It's not really original though. It's not, it's not an original theme, but you don't have to pay a license public domain.
Right.
So, and actually, even though I don't consider this original by like any legal definition, what I'm now hearing is the original kind of like Black Knight Sword of Rage to a lot of people was original, even though it's tied to a license. It's a pinball license, but
Right.
people think that way. So anyway, I'm rambling through it, but the rumor is that I heard the next game is the sequel to Whitewater. So I could see why people think that's original. No, technically you're going to have to if you're going to call it Whitewater, and maybe they're not.
Right.
Remember with Deep Root, there was when they did the whole slide deck dump of all their licenses, the Whitewater sequel was called Yeti something.
Right.
So that might be what they're doing to actually keep it original. I haven't heard a name. I've tempted to call it Whitewater, or the abbreviation on Pinside for Whitewater is WH2O, or I've seen people abbreviate it like that. So I want to say it's WH2O2, but I'm not sure we're going to do white hydrogen peroxide because now that would be a very interesting set of rules. Just imagine you're on a raft of hydrogen peroxide and you're like, don't get it on you. Everything, your teeth will be too white. It's just horrible stuff. So anyway, but that's the rumor, is they're going to do the Whitewater sequel that a lot of people apparently want for some reason. So that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it's sure. Why not? It's one of those things that it's...
And if the rumor's true, you won't have to wait long because supposedly it's the next game. Like the one we're waiting to hear, hopefully by TPF? ? I don't have a date.
I have no idea.
But
here's the thing. I'm at the point that if the company's name isn't Stern, we'll see a pinball machine when we see a pinball machine. It could be next week. It could be 15 years from now. It could be never.
Yeah. It's sort of it's a given at this stage. Stern's the only one with any sort of consistency on their release schedule.
Even when other companies give you a date, less than half the time does that date actually happen.
And that's where, again, American Pinball, right up there with Jersey Jack, they have spokespeople. In JJP's case, it's Jack Guarneri, and in AP's case, it's David Fix, that have been going out there repeatedly with very aggressive production proposals where they're both of those companies through them have been talking multiple games a year. And I'm getting really sick of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, with this, American Pinball has been doing a couple games a year, 2 or 3. I think they claimed 3.
Give me one game a year for a couple years. I'll be happy.
I think a lot of people would be, but anyway. So, are you not rumor-tained?
I am. No, not really.
Oh, well, they can't all be winners. So
now I'm just disappointed.
Speaking of winners, this is a good transition into the video game segment. We did have a couple emails. These are separate emails, but they're both from Chris Chandler. So One of them was just based off of our last episode. He just wrote 2 emails about this to talk about Yoku's Island Express. So he wants us to know, Tony, that it is fun and it is chill. And he described it more as a Metroidvania with pinball mechanics versus a platformer. Which Metroidvanias have mild platform, obviously.
Right.
But okay, that makes it sound
a little better.
A little better to you?
Okay. The eldest daughter expressed interest. She has not started playing the game yet, but she has expressed interest.
And then Chris also wrote in about a certain acquisition that I think you're going to spend a couple minutes.
It's the video game. It's the entire video game section at this point.
Well, it's hard to argue that anything is... Honestly, I can't remember the last time we saw video game news this big.
I can't.
I don't think since we started the podcast.
No. Well, and the thing is this is literally the largest video game purchase in history. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Microsoft has initiated the purchase of Activision-Blizzard for $68.7 billion. So
I guess they saved some thanks to all those harassment claims driving that stock down.
That would be my assumption. Now Microsoft has purchased a lot of game companies over the last several years.
Oh yeah, I think they've within the last 18 months it seems like they bought around a dozen.
Oh yeah, no, they're up to 23 total
But most of those have been very small.
Right. And we joked at one time several years ago when they were doing some of their first purchasing about them picking up somebody like Activision-Blizzard or EA or Konami.
Yeah, I know. My old, for those that have heard the older EGP episodes, I used to get on the soapbox a lot. My big one was that they should buy Capcom.
Right. Yeah. Well, they didn't buy Capcom. They went a little bigger than Capcom.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the overall sales in video games, Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft are both in like the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
So combining them together is going to push them up real high.
I mean, they're.
Yeah, it depends.
It depends on what you're counting. Because it's like Tencent is in there.
Yeah, because Tencent is normally considered number 1 when you're talking about just overall size.
Mm-hmm.
But like for 20 to 21 sales, Sony was considered number 1 with Tencent number 2, Nintendo number 3, and Microsoft number 4. But those numbers I don't like those numbers because those numbers included like certain other companies at like number 7 and number 8 type range. Like companies like Epic, but Tencent owns 40% of Epic.
Right. So it gets a little nebulous.
So it's starting to get a little, because Epic is technically its own entity, but
right.
Tencent owns just enough that they're just not quite a controlling interest.
Mm-hmm.
But they own enough that they have their own board members that are specifically come from Tencent to set as directors.
Right.
At
right.
Epic. So it gets a little nebulous. The general consideration is that the Tencent is the biggest, and then Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Activision-Blizzard are all in the top 5. And like I said, the combination of these two is going to push them way up there. So we'll see what ends up happening, especially with everything going on at Activision Blizzard right now, because just the fact of this isn't going to stop the lawsuits. Those are going to go through no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
Activision Blizzard does employ 10,000 people, and moving that many people and the sheer number of popular games directly into Microsoft's control is going to be interesting. And a lot of the stuff that has been coming up has been talking about the exclusivity. I'm going to read a couple of statements from various groups right now real quick, because this deal has to be approved by regulators.
Yes.
And that's not going to happen until second quarter of 23, most likely, is everything I'm looking at. According to Microsoft's statement, Bobby Kotick will continue to serve as CEO of Activision Blizzard, and he and his team will maintain their focus on driving efforts to further strengthen the company's culture and accelerate business growth. Once the deal closes, Activision Blizzard business will report to Phil Spencer, which a lot of people think is pushing that Bobby will probably go away after everything closes, which makes sense.
I would assume.
I would assume so. They've all said, as a company, Microsoft is committed to our journey for inclusion in every aspect of gaming among both employees and players. We deeply value individual studio cultures. We also believe that creative success and autonomy go hand in hand with treating every person with dignity and respect. We hold all teams and all leaders to this commitment. We're looking forward to extending our culture of proactive inclusion to the great teams of Activision Blizzard. So that's a direct slap at the law because of the lawsuits at the current leadership at Activision Blizzard, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And we haven't heard anything, at least recently, coming out of the closest thing was the stuff with Bill Gates, who was forced out of Microsoft apparently years ago, in part because of some harassment stuff.
Right.
Which is different than what Activision seems to do, which is let them maybe be CEO.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Support the harassers. Don't drive them out.
Support.
In an investor call, Satya Nadella, Microsoft boss, said that Activision had to continue to improve the lived experiences of employees, and the progress required leaders who not only talk the talk but walk the walk. Again, that seems like a straight shot at Bobby.
Yep.
Another follow-up is Upon close, we will offer as many Activision-Blizzard games as we can within Xbox Game Pass and PC Game Pass, both new titles and games from Activision-Blizzard's incredible catalog. We also announced today that Game Pass now has more than 25 million subscribers. As always, we look forward to continuing to add more value and more great games to Game Pass. The fantastic franchises across Activision-Blizzard will also accelerate our plans for cloud gaming, allowing more people in more places around the world to participate in the Xbox community using phones, tablets, laptops, and other devices you already own. Activision-Blizzard games are enjoyed on a wide variety of platforms, and we plan to continue to support those communities moving forward. Game Pass and Activision-Blizzard and World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing I've been seeing is having World of Warcraft access through Game Pass.
Yeah, I've been seeing more along the lines of just the putting Call of Duty as a day one Game Pass game.
Yes.
For so many people, there are a lot of people. It's very easy, I think, for those of us who are older who have more disposable income to forget. There are some people that only get a couple new games a year.
Right.
And there's a whole there's people that go and it's like Madden out of EA is something they always buy, and they always buy Call of Duty every year.
Right.
You don't have to spend $70 for Call of Duty day one. You can get it as part of your regular Game Pass subscription and so many other games. I mean, it's just, I do not use Game Pass yet.
I let it lapse. But
everyone, I've never seen anyone disagree that it is the best subscription deal in gaming easily.
It is. I used it for quite a while, played a whole bunch of games on it, really enjoyed it, and then I let it lapse because I wasn't using it as much as I thought was worthwhile. I started playing some other older games and stuff, but it is an excellent deal. I got a note from the press, or from analyst firm Wedbush, about the purchase. The game library affords Microsoft the opportunity to offer Activision-Blizzard games exclusively on its Xbox Series XS console, but that opportunity may be foiled by antitrust regulators. We expect the FTC and the U.S. Justice Department to scrutinize the transaction and to determine the potential impact on Sony's PlayStation console sales should Activision-Blizzard games be offered exclusively on the Xbox platform. Because Call of Duty has been the best-selling game over the last 18 years on PlayStation platform, we think that it's likely that regulators will restrict the terms of the combination and require Microsoft to continue to offer Activision Blizzard and perhaps other games to Sony under substantially the same terms that has been offered in the past. That's not a surprise to me. And the exclusivity thing, there are a fairly large number of games out there that are coming out of Microsoft owned studios that are still getting like 1 year console exclusives to PlayStation, even though they're coming out of a Microsoft owned studio.
Yeah, all past agreements were honored.
Right,
so.
they've honored all the past agreements.
I don't think anyone's worried that they're going to break any terms of any. Now, this is my, and I am not an expert on regulation. Personally, I think Wedbush is wrong. I think this deal is going to go through, and I don't think there will be restrictions.
You don't think so?
Now, Microsoft might choose to do that, but no, I don't. Okay, so it was the best-selling franchise on, but it's like, so what? If there were no other games, I mean, what does this mean? To me, it's like, when do we don't go in and say Mario sells too much for just Nintendo?
Right. No, I think the big thing is because Call of Duty has traditionally had such a tight tie with PlayStation to the point that even when they are directly marketed as PlayStation games, a lot of times, even when they have been multi-item compatible, they're still primarily marketed on PlayStation because that's how their contracts with Sony are set up. I think it might be more like what they've done with Bethesda, where certain games will remain as cross-platform, but they might take newer titles and lock them down. I think I would be amazed. I think, and I could be completely wrong, I would think that they'd probably more likely than not leave Call of Duty multi-platform, just because there's so many sales on that on PlayStation. That's so much pure profit to them. It would hurt them more to go exclusive than to leave that one multi while taking other titles and locking them down. Like recently with Bethesda, after the Bethesda purchase, there's several Bethesda titles that are coming out that they have now confirmed are going to be Xbox and PC exclusives. Starfield, from the sounds of it, they're going to do the same thing with Elder Scrolls 6 when it comes out. It is going to be Xbox and PC exclusive.
Yeah. And I expect them to do it for all the Bethesda stuff.
I do too. To the bare minimum, do a 1-year exclusive console release, but probably with everything. I
think at some point it's an interesting balance because you're very correct. In fact, that's often the factor that people ask about exclusivity with third party, because you're cutting your potential sales down when you do. I mean, like last gen, it made more sense to go ahead and say, I'll go ahead and do a PS4 exclusive because they just had so much market share versus Xbox that maybe you didn't lose all that many sales. But, and I definitely could see Microsoft saying, you know, Call of Duty, because it's so popular already and it's been on so many platforms already, I definitely could see them saying, you know, as a cash cow, we'd rather go ahead and keep that multi-plat. I just don't think the regulators are going to make them.
Right.
There's so many, because it's about competition, right? Well, it's not just Call of Duty. Are there other shooters that are still available?
Correct.
Yes. You know, this doesn't affect Battlefield. This doesn't, now Microsoft has done this before. Minecraft. They kept multi-plat.
Which was very smart.
And it did very well for them. So I easily could see them not bring Call of Duty in-house, but I just don't think the regulators are going to make them.
Now, what I think is what they're actually going to probably end up doing, and is the hints that I've seen some other people thinking and putting out as well, is that they are going to take, because Activision-Blizzard, knowing that Call of Duty has been their cash cow, has been slowly pulling other of their divisions and turning them into producing purely Call of Duty content.
Yeah, they have like 4 now.
And that's why they're that's why they're able to put out a brand new Call of Duty game every single year. I think we'll see that drop. I think they'll break some of those groups back off to doing the type of games they did originally, and moving them back away from Call of Duty. And you might see Call of Duty drop to an every couple year release instead of having 3 studios that all they do is work on mainline AAA Call of Duty games, so you can drop one every single year. And then having a 4th studio that works on just mobile Call of Duty stuff. And then 2 other little groups that work on glitter and outfits, and that all they do is make pretty stuff to sell as extra add-ons for stuff. I think we might see some of those companies break back off because they've got what? They've got Treyarch and several others that's all they do.
Yeah, maybe. The thing is that if this is like going to be a big tent pole for Game Pass, people expect an annual Call of Duty, and so now that doesn't necessarily mean they couldn't achieve that with fewer studios, but
right.
But normally my concern when you're doing something every single year is I look at like the rhythm game or the rock band style game genre or the Assassin's Creeds where it got oversaturated and the sales fell. But Call of Duty, for whatever reason, it seems immune to that.
Right.
And if that's the case, why give it up?
And they seem pretty immune even to having bad games, because a lot of their games that have come out haven't been that great. They don't even review well, but they're very...
Yeah, and maybe that's just everyone wants the multiplayer. Like it's what all my friends play, and that's what I'm going to play. Yeah, I don't know. The other thing on the regulation side, why I've been so skeptical about what Wedbush is saying is that we know for sure that it's going to be PC also. You don't have to buy an Xbox console. So
right.
And Microsoft doesn't sell those PCs. So Microsoft's always able to say, it's not exclusive to our console infrastructure. We don't have a walled garden like Sony does.
Right. And because they've been pushing that for the last, 4 years?
Yeah, it's Phil Spencer has made it incredibly clear that unless for some reason there was a game that could only work on a console for some reason, like everything comes out on PC also. Everything. They want you to get the service. They don't care if you buy, really, the Xbox is just to coddle people like me who want to play on their TV. It's not, it's not like Sony where they need to drive console sales. Microsoft doesn't care if you buy their console or not, as long as you're in their their ecosystem, and you will be in their ecosystem.
And
now.
I'm in their ecosystem because I play Microsoft games on.
So that's the thing. That's
PC.
the big ace in the hole is they never lock you into their hardware. As long as everything continues to come out on PC, and I'm sure they'll promise the regulators that this will always be available on PC. All of our stuff is.
Yeah.
I just don't see it's diversified then because you're not stuck having to buy Microsoft equipment.
Right.
I mean, yes, you have to buy a Microsoft game, but that's true with you'd have to buy the game no matter what, unless you pirated it.
You'd have to buy a Microsoft game even if it was available on.
That's where
PlayStation.
I don't think regulators are going to look and have this pity party mercy thing for Sony, which is not exactly like Sony doesn't have a whole slew of exclusive third party studios beholden to them.
And based upon the 20 to 21 game sales numbers, this combination is still not higher than Sony.
Hmm?
It's still like 2 million under Sony. So
yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah,
that's a little nothing by.
It's a little nothing.
Now, when Microsoft buys EA, I don't know.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is. I mean, here I've got the list. Here's of all of the current owned game studios for Microsoft. 343 Industries, which is who they had take over Halo when Bungie left.
Yep.
Of course, Activision-Blizzard is pending. Alpha Dog Games, which does mobile and tablet games. Arcane, which is Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop. That came out of the Bethesda purchase. Bethesda Game Studios, obviously the Fallout games, Elder Scrolls, Starfield coming up. Compulsion Games, they did We Happy Few.
Yeah, smaller one.
Yeah, they're one of the smaller ones. Double Fine, they did Psychonauts.
Double Fine's more of a cult favorite company because they're kind of smaller games too.
Right, but their games are huge. Specifically, the Psychonauts games are enormously huge and popular. id Software, Doom and Quake, and that's
and the revamped id was what I would have considered a has-been. It's more like they were a legend but both Doom and Quake in the modern era have been very popular games.
Right. Because, I mean, I remember...
Especially Doom.
Yeah, I remember in 97, we attended QuakeCon.
Yeah, the second one ever,
Yeah, the second QuakeCon. That was when they were huge and everything. Then they kind of dropped away. But they've come, especially the new Dooms have been huge. And massively revitalized.
They're really good. It's just that style of shooter... The way the new formula that they kind of clicked with, where it's an always keep moving shooter, and they're not a lot like that.
No, there's not.
So Doom is really, that's a big one for them.
Yep. In Exile Entertainment, they made the Wasteland games, which are basically kind of Fallout-y games, and the Bard's Tale games.
Yeah, I haven't played that.
Machine Games, they did all the Wolfenstein remakes. Right. They're part of the Bethesda pickup.
Yep. That's another decent one.
Yeah, the new Wolfenstein games are huge. Obviously, Mojang Studios, that's Minecraft. Ninja Theory, Devil May Cry. And
this is one where a lot of Japanese game fans kind of excited that maybe Microsoft will finally have something interesting from the East.
Right.
Because that's kind of been an area that I know frustrates a lot of people who are fans of Japanese games.
Right. That's all. They also do the new those Hellblade games that have gotten so popular lately. Obsidian Entertainment, obviously, The Outer Worlds, Dungeon Siege 3, KOTOR 2. They've got quite
a pedigree, and I think they were probably surprised at how well Outer Worlds did, because that might be a new I mean, we know there's a second one coming out.
Yeah, there's a second one coming.
But that game was. I think that's a new franchise for them.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm an Obsidian fan. I've got both Pillars of Eternity. I've got Tyranny.
And they made the good Fallout.
And they made the good Fallout New Vegas.
Yep.
They got screwed on that deal, but
great game though.
It was a great game. It's still my favorite Fallout of the modern Fallouts. Playground Games, they're the Forza Horizon studio.
You know, there's a rumor going around that they're actually Playground is the ones working on the new Fable RPG.
Really?
Yeah, that they picked up a new team.
Interesting.
Under that, which is surprising because they're known for car games.
Right. Maybe the new Fable has horse racing.
Yes.
Horse cars.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Rare, obviously, their big thing right now is Sea of Thieves, but I mean, they have like half of Nintendo's exclusives in the N64 day. They did GoldenEye, they did.
Yeah, it would be interesting. You know, Rare's kind of, in my view, a wasted company. I would like to see them try and exploit some of that. A lot of people, again, it's one of those, they're more a legend now. For Rare, unfortunately, got stuck doing all the Kinect games when Microsoft tried to push the Kinect technology. And so I think a lot of hardcore gamers kind of forgot about them. And then Sea of Thieves was an interesting idea, but I don't know how well
it seems to be doing pretty well.
Is it doing well? Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be doing pretty well. I've actually played it a little bit when I had Game Pass. I can see it's something that would have been a lot more fun if I had like a bunch of people to play with me as well.
Yeah, but that's why I never looked at it. I thought, I don't know anyone who would want to do this with me, so I didn't bother.
Let's see, where was it? Oh, Roundhouse Studio. They did the Rune series and
I don't know them.
Prey for the original Prey from 2006.
Okay. I've played that.
The Coalition. Who's the Gears of War people now? Yeah. They've Gears 4, 5.
Yeah,
Tactics.
very popular Microsoft staple.
Tango Gameworks. They did Evil Within. They've got Ghostwire Tokyo coming out, which looks really cool.
I loved the Evil Within games. I was hoping they'll do more in that vein, if not actually calling it that.
Right. The Initiative, they're working on a Perfect Dark reboot.
Yep. A lot of people are excited about that. Interesting, though, that Rare isn't.
Yes. that is interesting. Turn 10 Studios, which are the Forza Motorsport side.
It's the hardcore
Horizon side.
Right, they're the realistic racer. This is the Gran Turismo of Microsoft.
Yeah. Undead Labs, they're the State of Decay people. They've done the first 2 State of Decays. The State of Decay 3 is under production. Mm-hmm. If you've not played the State of Decay games, they are very fun zombie games. I think they get the right mix of the open world and like fortification.
I think I accidentally asked for and got a different zombie game that wasn't that I didn't like. So
the State of Decay games, I feel like hit the target right on for that kind of thing. World's Edge is a studio that actually they don't produce anything. Their entire reason for existing is to manage the Age of Empires assets.
Okay.
So they manage the Age of Empires and they manage the people who are hired to develop Age of Empires. Because there's a new Age of Empires under development currently.
Right.
So
I assume that'll be PC only, but we'll see.
That's my guess. Xbox Game Studios, Microsoft Flight Simulator. They also do have like the Ori games and a whole bunch of other little stuff. And of course, ZeniMax, which his entire purpose is Elder Scrolls Online.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they have a solid, and bringing Activision-Blizzard in is just, because my assumption is they'll bring Activision-Blizzard in, and then they will break them into Activision and Blizzard again, and King, because it's Activision-Blizzard King.
Mm-hmm.
So my assumption is they're probably going to break them back into their own separate parts, once they get underneath the umbrella of Microsoft, because they did that with Bethesda. They broke Bethesda into individual.
There's now that it's not its own company, there's not necessarily a purpose to being Activision Blizzard King. It doesn't serve any function.
Right. So that will give them, and we never talk about the King portion of Activision Blizzard King, but it's Candy Crush.
Right.
So I mean, it's not like it's minor.
Right. But that's basically, again, to me, there are certain pieces on this that are just clearly like cash cow stuff. They'll keep that going, and it's not a question about exclusivity or pushing Game Pass, or that will just be what it
just prints money.
Yeah, it prints money for them. Right.
It's just every month deposit.
Yep.
Deposit. That's all that.
It'll help pay off the price of the deal eventually. Eventually, alone it probably could. It might take a few decades, but it could.
But it's going to be there.
Yeah.
We'll finish a few things up on the whole Activision Blizzard Microsoft talk real quick here. Phil Spencer, in an interview, did mention that they are looking at resurrecting some of the old Activision Blizzard franchises. So like the Spyros, Crash Bandicoot, Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk games, stuff like that.
I know a lot of people wanted to see that stuff come back.
Yeah,
so.
you hear about all the time when people talk about the nostalgia games where stuff is coming back. Tony Hawk especially is always like one of the number one things you hear. A lot of people like Crash Bandicoot. My wife wants Spyro back so bad it's not even funny.
And Guitar Hero, I always did Rock Band. I never really did Guitar Hero, but that being said, it's been a whole gaming console generation where we basically didn't do the plastic instrument games. It might be able to bring them back. Maybe now. I don't know.
I think
I'd wait till we're definitely after the pandemic.
Right. I wonder about licensing issues in this day and age might be too much because so many games are Twitch streamed, and that game is just you're going to lose a whole segment of what would honestly be a good. I mean, games like Rock Band and that would be a great streaming game, but with licensing, I would think.
Yeah, but I don't. How many people buy games only because they want to stream them? Is that a big enough chunk of the overall?
I don't know.
I mean, I know a lot of people. I mean, I've gone and streamed before, but I'm a loser. It's like no one cares about my audience level. Right,
but a lot of times a game's popularity can be direct. You can directly draw a line to how popular.
Sure. That is a good point. I didn't think about that
because a lot of people, the first time they see a game is when they watch somebody stream it, and it can go from I've heard about it or whatever to oh my god, I got to play this game. I've purchased games because I watched people stream it. I'm like, this game's awesome. That's why I have Satisfactory, even though it's in early access.
But Guitar Hero is a known thing. Like most people have touched it before, so they don't. It's not the same as like trying to excite people about Among Us or something where you've never heard of it before.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe.
I think the question there might also be is how well is Rock Band doing? Because I know a Rock Band came out in the last year or two.
Yeah, I don't.
How well did that?
And I don't know. Go? And they might not want to do that one anyway, just because there are the peripherals, and you'd have to arrange for the. Microsoft isn't really big in building a lot of, it was under prior leadership where they were doing like the Windows Phone and stuff. And it seems like they've really moved other than the Xbox consoles are a rare exception to them regarding, they seem to have forgone building a lot of hardware. Like,
yeah.
Really focused on software and cloud. So,
Bobby Kotick did host a video conference, what they call a fireside chat. It was supposed to be a 30-minute. No. Well, there was a dumpster fire. It was supposed to be a 30-minute. There was supposed to be some like questions put in beforehand was for some Q&A. He apparently showed up 7 minutes late to it. It lasted 16 minutes, and he left without answering a single question.
Fireside lecture.
Yeah, he didn't really address any concerns about the takeover lawsuits. The reports are he made a lot of jokes and talked about being committed to remaining in his role, and it was nothing big. It was a complete waste of time. He did anger a lot of his people. He did an interview recently where he talked about the declining stock prices, and he specifically blamed Blizzard for it because of Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4's delays. Which has, with no mention of everything else that's going on. Also, that made a lot of anger because there's a lot of reports coming out that he is directly responsible, especially for Overwatch 2's delays.
I saw the headlines for that. I did not read the articles. I heard it sounded like someone has accused him of meddling in the development process.
I read some of the articles about it. Apparently, he specifically stepped in during Overwatch 2 development, and he would basically have the entirety or the majority of the Overwatch 2 team pulled off of working on Overwatch 2 to work on something like a special project for Overwatch. And then 3 weeks later, he'd come back and tell them, never mind, it's canceled, go back to Overwatch 2. And he apparently did that multiple times.
Okay.
So they lost months of development time working on special projects that have never been released and were all canned. That he specifically pulled their team off of their job to do something else. And now he's blaming them, according to the articles and according to the reports.
Right.
That he's blaming them for all the problems. Also, my last little bit, Mike Ybarra, the sole leader of Blizzard. Dennis can see I made a lot of smart alecky comments. I'm not actually going to repeat them.
Yeah, there were a lot.
But he put out his first public discussion of the year. He acknowledged that 21 was a rough year and that priority for Blizzard was going to be rebuilding trust in the brand and working on making a safe, inclusive work environment.
I'm sorry, I was seeing these notes you're making. My amazed you didn't put in cooties in here anywhere.
I know. Okay. I was very smart alecky when I wrote this up. He's also mentioned that they've added several management positions designed completely around working on culture and HR issues, and that they're aware that they need to deliver content on a more regular basis and innovate both in and beyond their existing games. That's going to be rough because they've only got 2 games in production right now, and both of them have been delayed until 23.
Yep.
So I don't know what they're going to do, short of pulling some people and trying to shore up some direct Overwatch content to try and keep what fan base is left.
That's about it. Maybe they could do some stuff in game on World of Warcraft.
Right, but World of Warcraft is hemorrhaged so bad. I don't know how much they can do to save it at this point.
I don't know.
It'll be.
I mean, maybe if people, you could argue if people leave, they could possibly come back. But,
yeah, I mean, and that's always the possibility.
But anything really substantive that would bring back the losses would have to be a game release worth of content, though. So that's not going to happen in a year. It would only, maybe they could tweak some stuff. If there's some, again, I haven't played World of Warcraft in so long. I don't know what minor thing might work. Maybe there's nothing.
I don't know if there. Yeah, I don't know. It's been even longer for me since I played Warcraft or World of Warcraft. We'll see. I think. Basically, they're just going to have to hold on until Overwatch 2 drops and Diablo 4 drop. I think they might be better off doing things to increase how rapidly they can get those games out without causing massive crunches.
Yeah.
But also in the final bit of thing is Lego announced that they are suspending their Overwatch 2 Lego sets that were supposed to start dropping next month, and that they are currently reviewing their partnership with Blizzard due to Blizzard's internal practices.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the Microsoft deal will probably be done before Overwatch 2 is ready. So, given that, I bet you they'll end up releasing it eventually, but because of new management, and I do. And maybe naive of me, but I do think Microsoft will clean this shop up.
Oh, I think so too. Because I think I'm one of the people that falls under the heading that I think a big part of the problem is management. Mm. And I think once this is done, Microsoft is going to come in with a hatchet and they're going to dump the management. They're going to tear it apart.
Yeah. I mean, normally it seems, and this is, I believe, lessons learned from Microsoft's past, like with what happened with Bungie and such, but generally, if things are going well, they like to try and preserve the corporate cultures of the studios to allow them to be creative and not be heavy-handed on it. But when you've got a PR problem like that ties to this, you got to go in and get rid of the And again, a lot of these high-level people like Bobby, they're going to get these huge stock paydays. Yeah, I think they're going to walk away. I don't even think they all need to be hatcheted. They're going to be like, yeah, I know, I'm done.
Bobby he should get something around 300 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is the numbers that are.
So they'll take their stock options, which will be, once the deal goes through, that will be, liquidated out of the loss of the company, and they'll go off into the sunset, I guess.
Yeah. Lucky for them.
I guess the big question I would ask, after you getting through all of this, do you think Microsoft buying Activision is good for gaming or bad or neutral, or do you have a thought? Because that's the big discussion that everyone's having.
Right. I think for the workers, it's good. For the stockholders, it's definitely good. I think for the general gamers, I think it'll be all right. I don't see any. I don't think it's going to be a big problem. They've shown their work to me for how they handle these type of things before, and it's done good, and there's still good games coming out.
This isn't the Microsoft of the Internet Explorer scandal era.
Right.
I know some people like to still treat it like that, but
right.
And of course, it is a corporation. It's going to do what's in its corporation's best interest. It just seems to me that Microsoft has realized, especially since Phil Spencer took over gaming, actually that's what I directly attribute it to, that he's like, if you do these things that are good to gamers, it's good for our business.
Right.
So let's do it. Our interests align. Just trust me. And clearly, Microsoft as a company has given Phil more and more trust as he's, I guess, walked that sort of walk.
Right. And it's worked for them.
Yeah. And again, as someone who, last, now 3 generations on the console side have only gone with Microsoft. I've wanted to see them do, I went through where 360 where they were very competitive with Sony, then the Xbox One where they were not. And it was, those were some dark times. I'd say most people would probably win on this. The only real people that would lose are people that only go in on the Sony console. Obviously, they're going to have to evaluate whether that is a strat because, this doesn't hurt PC gamers. This doesn't hurt Xbox gamers. It doesn't really hurt Nintendo gamers because they, ever since the Wii, have moved away with keeping up on the hard, they don't have the systemic power to run all these third-party things.
Yeah, no. Nintendo is their own special Nintendo
they're their own
thing.
They're their own Nintendo thing. So Sony, now, as someone who is, I guess on the console war divide of as much as it happened, it's like, of course you want what you've bought to do well. I'm sure people who have bought PS5s are pretty concerned. I joked not in our Discord, but in someone else's Discord that, well, look on the bright side, Sony fans. I imagine here soon, it's not going to be hard to find a PS5 available. Enjoy your hide in the tall grass games. Well, because obviously, whether or not Call of Duty remains multi-platform, let's set that aside. So much of this will not. Right. So much of the rest of it will not be multi-platform. That it's finally, I think personally, I thought Microsoft had finally more than achieved proper parity with Sony, with the other, especially once, they had me once they got Bethesda because I'm Bethesda's servant. I'm
yes.
Like, yes, Bethesda, I worship on your altar, except Fallout 76. What were you thinking? But with this, it's finally what I had thought back in the dark days. What I was always arguing is like, Microsoft, you are so much richer than any other gaming company because of everything else that you do. Why don't you just buy your way out of this problem? Like, you're the Yankees. So, hire the Mickey Mantles. Don't quit playing by the same rules. You have money. So buy your victory and don't be ashamed of it. Just buy it. We just want games. We just want good games to play. Don't care how you. So early on, they were picking up all these studios, but so many of them were small. And of course, there were all these lag times on getting not just getting an exclusive, just getting anything out of them. And now finally, they're going to have they were at it before this. And I don't know, I've seen discussion online about, it's interesting because some people have long defended Sony's. Sony has had some really, and still do have some really, really exciting exclusives.
They do.
Spider-Man, the Event Horizons, all of that stuff. It's interesting to see them. And I get it because of course, if you don't own an Xbox and you don't game on a PC, yeah, it sucks for them, but they defended it when Sony did it for a decade plus.
Right.
And that's all Microsoft's doing is just taking your favorite stuff and making it their own. It's just the way. This is the way.
And here's the thing is I actually like Microsoft better for it because I'm a PC gamer.
Yeah, that's the moral high ground that they, again, works to their advantage for their Game Pass stuff and all of that. But that's the moral high ground they get to cite is we don't wall you into our console garden, and Sony does.
Because I eventually bought a PS4 when I could get one on sale very cheap to play Spider-Man and Event Horizon and stuff like that, and not Event Horizon, Horizon Zero Dawn. And games like that.
Yeah, Horizon Zero.
But honestly, I played those games and I enjoyed them. And I've not touched my PlayStation since.
Right. And that's always been my issue. Like, Horizon looked really good to me, but it's like, I couldn't rationalize paying a few $100s.
And it's on PC now.
For a game experience.
Finally. And from what I hear, it's a very good port.
Good. But, so yeah, overall, I think it's more of a neutral. It's very good for Microsoft and people into the Microsoft infrastructure. There was never any threat. Like it's neutral for PC gamers because they'll still have access to this stuff. There was no threat of Sony acquiring Activision. No. Now I've seen some people saying that Sony needs to respond to this. I don't see how.
I don't know.
I think someone on YouTube had a video where they were like arguing, well, maybe Sony could acquire Square or Capcom. Like,
I don't think Sony could afford Square.
I think his argument was that they thought that might be on the upper limit of what they could do. But I mean, clearly, we've seen at least a few exclusives, timed or otherwise, between Square and Sony, and Capcom and Sony. And, you know, I remember just before this announcement about the Microsoft acquisition came out, there was a thing about how Phil Spencer had weighed in, unconcerned would be the way I would describe it, regarding the announcement that Sony was expected to soon be announcing their version of Game Pass.
Right.
It ain't going to be as good.
It can't be.
And maybe that was their plan, was let's work with Capcom, let's work with Square. It's just not enough. It's not enough. They don't have strong enough franchises.
And remember, we spoke about it a few episodes ago that Square came out at an investors meeting and flat out said, because there had been rumors of somebody offering or attempting to purchase Square, and they came out and said those rumors weren't true.
And everyone thought it was Microsoft.
Right.
But maybe it was Sony.
I mean, Square, maybe Sony's in a better place than I thought.
Yes and no. I mean, now their gaming division is doing very well. The thing that I read, though, recently, I think it was last week, was that Sony as a company, about 30% of their money's coming from the gaming division.
Right.
Microsoft doesn't like that. I don't want to say it's a pittance. Phil's really built it up, but it's like Microsoft doesn't need their gaming division. There was a time before Phil Spencer came in where a lot of people thought Microsoft would just spin off Xbox and be rid of it rather than having it, because the guy before, I already forgot his name, the guy before Phil was, you know, they took the Xbox One and they were promoting it as a multimedia device to watch TV, and that was the push. And I remember seeing this stuff. I'm like, I'm a gamer and you're making me not want this.
Right.
You know, there were controversies about the DRM and all of that, but the thing is where it's now working to their, and of course the internet's a lot further along now than you know, speeds are better. There's less throttling, less caps for people, you know, higher caps or caps being eliminated. And so the circumstances have changed. So now Microsoft has been pushing this cloud-based service and it works for people more. And Sony can't just go back and go, hey, look, you can go to the store and buy a physical copy of this. Like, I don't even like physical copies anymore because I have to remember to put the disc in.
Yeah. Well, and that's understandable. I mean, and as a PC gamer, I haven't done physical copies in.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I think one of the last times I bought a physical copy of a game as a PC player, I took it home, and I put the disc in my computer, closed the CD-ROM, it auto ran, and it asked me to log into Steam.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the thing. And then I think, and I mean, there is a cloud gaming out there now. Google's Stadia is trying to do it now.
Right.
But they don't have the games that when Xbox drops a full out cloud-based, because they've talking about cloud-based gaming. They even talked about it in their stuff in their talks about the purchase of Activision-Blizzard. Some of them, they talked about it. But when they pull the trigger on something like that, because of the gaming that they have access to compared to the Stadia, it will overwhelm. The problem is, I think there are still too many people who are locked behind the throttling. We're in a very lucky area for high fiber internet. And I've already seen some people are like, at some stage they'll expect that the Xbox will become an HDMI stick that you plug into. Which wouldn't surprise me.
And you can integrate with your controller. Yeah, eventually. But for the time being, it's like, no, the changes have been that it's so easy to download a game now, but you want to run it locally for a lot of reasons. And that's a bigger hurdle to get over. But because it's not a big deal where you're like, for most people aren't waiting 2 days to install something anymore.
Right.
Having Game Pass, or it's just like with Steam, just going online, laying it download, and then it's on your hard drive or your solid state and you're good to go. It's people like that.
Right.
Because then they don't have to manage it anymore.
Well, and it's also nice, like if we're going on vacation, I can take my Xbox or my PlayStation or my Nintendo Switch dock, and when we get to the hotel, I can plug it in the TV, and I don't have to try and set up stuff through the... I've got games downloaded, and I can play them.
Yeah.
Say I've got a laptop that can handle games. Exact same thing. So, we'll see. I think it'll be interesting going forward. My last question before we leave and abandon people, after talking about video games forever and ever and ever and ever, who do you think the next target for Microsoft should be? Well, my assumption is it's probably nothing's going to happen until this is completed. Yeah, so we're looking at probably 24 or 25.
Yeah, I don't think they are targeting anyone else right now. From a logically speaking, I'm like, well, they shouldn't have to pick up any more. Like, surely this is enough.
I think they pick up Sony.
I was talking to someone about, was it you? I was talking to someone about, they thought that the Japanese rules prohibited.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to. And even if it was allowed in Japan, it wouldn't be allowed. I don't think U.S.
I would think it would be more likely that Sony and Nintendo would try and merge. In some capacity.
I mean, I can see that.
It's all weird because Sony is more than just video games. Nintendo isn't, but Sony, I can't imagine them ever spinning off PlayStation because they need it for, like, Sony Pictures and stuff is not doing great. Right. They need the gaming division to float the rest of the company.
Right.
So, no, I mean, I guess if Microsoft, if they were to pick up someone, and I don't know if it becomes more complicated outside of other Japanese options, back in the 360 era, maybe they've forsaken this now, but Xbox has never really been able to get a foothold. And that's why I always argued for Capcom is it's a relatively low valuation company compared to something like Microsoft. And it's got games that I think you have people that are just like, they just have to buy it.
Yeah.
They'd have to buy it. They want Street Fighter or whatever. So, I think a company like targeting some other genres, like Phil has talked up a lot about one. So what's missing from the Microsoft portfolio? They're not strong. These are all lesser genres, of course, versus shooters, but they have Killer Instinct under the Rare branding, but they don't really have any other fighting games. So picking up a big fighting game studio would be to their advantage. Most of them are Japanese. Shoot 'em ups. Most of them are Japanese. Picking up honestly, Cave they could buy with the lint pocket change, whatever they got.
Let me see what I got.
It's a super teeny company, but it's beloved and worshipped. I was talking to someone that they wished Microsoft would pick up Konami, and
I think Konami would be a good one
and fix them because aren't they focusing mostly still on like arcade games lately?
Pretty much, they've shifted to the arcade games and pachinko.
So they're making
slot machines.
Yeah, so they're making devices. So getting them to actually bring back those franchises that would be a good move.
Because Konami, because they've put out. I saw an article a year or two ago that was talking about all these Konami is using their franchises in slot machines and stuff like that.
The only thing is with that is I wonder if Microsoft looks at Konami and they're like, we don't want to deal with all the hardware side of their business anymore. And obviously, I would say Konami probably wouldn't want to spin off. I mean, it could, as long as they could still use the licenses and their other stuff.
Right.
Maybe they could do like a Konami video gaming versus Konami, slots gambling game.
Right.
I don't know.
But I think you're right. I think Capcom. I think if they want to get their fingers into the Japanese market and the Asian market, Bandai Namco.
That's one. Yeah, I'd thought about that.
Lots of fighting games, lots of shoot 'em ups, lots of JRPGs, lots of beloved franchises, lots of licenses that are super popular. But I think it'd be a huge purchase.
Yeah.
But I think if that was their target goal, was to get more influence in the Asian market, I think that or Square would be the obvious ones.
Yeah.
I think Bandai Namco would give them more wider breadth of entry.
Folks can write into us to let us know what they think Microsoft should buy next.
Yes.
You can always contact us at eclecticgamerspodcast@gmail.com, or you can send us a message over at facebook.com/eclecticgamerspodcast.
We're available on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram as eclectic_gamers, some of which Instagram occasionally actually gets some of the other stuff.
Sometimes.
But
But it is what it is. So anyway, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and maybe we'll be telling you about what new thing Microsoft bought. I don't know.
it's possible.
But until then, I'm Dennis.
I'm Tony.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.